Hello, stream. I'm going to do a nice little surprise evening stream. Because you know what? We still got a lot of work to do. And I want to get this book done. Because now it's got a gorgeous new cover. Which is gorgeous. And just in case you don't know the cover I'm talking about. Oh my god, right? Right? Like, come on. Give me a break. That's fucking amazing. So. So we're going to keep working on it. I can only work for an hour and a half, so it's not going to be a very long stream. But more hours equals done books. All right. Hey, what's up, Bodegazilla? Yes, I changed shirts. Chapter 15. 4 more days passed in cheerless rain. Lauren told Jem and Annis of her dream, at least as much of it as she had discussed with Chet, but they had no more inkling of its meaning than she herself had. The 4 of them were more watchful after that, but Huel was just as inactive as he had always been, and nothing of interest happened within Ammon's walls. The last day of year's end arrived, and the stronghold held a feast to celebrate the new year. It had been more than 2 weeks since Lauren arrived at Ammon, and her frustration had now dwindled to a pervasive apathy. She rarely went into the training yard anymore, and spent most of her time in the stables visiting midnight, or else in her own chamber, from which she emerged only for meals. But the year's end feast drew her out of hiding at last, if only because Annis was very excited about it. Somehow the girl had convinced Cal to let her arrange the whole thing, and it promised to be a merrier affair than Ammon had seen in years. Just after dawn on the day of the feast, Lauren rode with Chet to a nearby river to bathe, and she also laundered her clothes. When at last they went to the dining hall after midday, they were not disappointed. The smell of the food struck her from a good ways off, well before she walked in the door. Most of the tables were cleared to the edges of the room, except for a line of them down the center. Upon these were placed all manner of fine foods, from meats and vegetables to sweet treats baked with honey, and still other dishes made with spices that smelled wholly unfamiliar to Lauren. They found not only the usual wine and ale waiting for them, but brandywines and meads and other clear liquors that Lauren had never seen before, but which smelled stronger than anything she had ever tasted. There were minstrels as well, a small party of them clustered off to one side of the room. They did not wear the red of mystics, and so Lauren guessed they must have come from one of the towns that lay not far away from Ammon. They plucked and pounded and blew upon their instruments enthusiastically, if not particularly well, and Lauren saw many of the mystics around the room stamping their feet and pounding their fists or mugs upon the table in time with the music. But from his elevated table at the head of the hall, Cal often glared at the minstrels and tore more savagely at his food the longer they played. Oh. After Lauren had taken her plate down the row of tables and loaded it high with food, she found a place at the table with Chet, Annis, and Jem. Jem looked to be nearly done with his first plate by the time she reached them, and he soon rose to go fill another. Annis ate more delicately, but she savored her bites, moaning gently at each morsel and dabbing at the corners of her mouth with the edge of her sleeve. Having planned the feast myself, I was able to instruct the kitchens in preparing all of the dishes just the way I liked them, she said. I've not enjoyed so many of my favorite treats since I left my family's home upon the seat. However did you convince Cal to let you do this, said Lauren. This is a fine celebration. One might almost call it joyous, and that is a word I would never have used to describe the Grand Chancellor. Yes. I'm surprised he did not flay you when you presented your plans to him. Annis giggled. I offered my expertise in planning the feast, and Cal accepted easily enough. Then, when he saw the list of things I intended to procure, he almost boxed my ears. But then I showed him my figures and how this feast would cost him just over half of what he normally spent, for I did my duty and secured the best prices for the wares I required. He fell silent quickly enough after that, and left me to handle the rest of it. She leaned over the table and dropped her voice to a murmur, though I waited until after that to hire the minstrels. Chet laughed aloud, and Lauren joined in. They began to eat, and she swiftly discovered that she and Annis shared similar tastes, as it was the best food she had had in some time, and even compared favorably to the meal she had been served in the High King's palace. After some time, and more food, and more wine as well, some mystics pushed a number of tables against the wall. After some time and more food and more wine as well, some mystics pushed tables against walls to clear a section of empty floor. Then the minstrels redoubled their playing, and the drummers took the lead, and the dancing began. Lauren had never dreamed she would see these warriors, who were always so grim in their red cloaks, laughing and prancing upon the stone floor like the villagers from her home in the birchwood. The comparison seemed especially apt when Chet got to his feet and drew her up after him, pulling her into a dance that she laughed all the way through. "We've never danced together. Do you realize that?" he said, as one song finished and they waited for the chords of the next to begin. She smiled at him, but then the smile dampened, for his words brought her parents to mind. They, after all, were the reason Chet had been forbidden to approach her at the village dances. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "I only meant that I'm happy to do so now." "And so am I," she said. I wish we had had years of this. We should not let that fate befall others." She pointed back to their table where Jem and Annis still sat. Annis had begun to fiddle with her own... Annis had begun to fiddle with her fingers, and... Every so often she looked nervously over at Jem. The boy did not seem to notice her, for his gaze wandered the room, lingering on the table where their mystic friends sat. Chet's gaze met Lauren's, and he nodded as he took her meaning. As the next song began, they ran up to the table. Lauren seized Jem's hands and drew him up, while Chet did the same to Annis. "Come, Master Urchin," said Lauren. "I know you are a scholar and an expert thief. Let us see if you are a dancer as well." It soon became apparent that he was. The minstrel struck up a tune as old as the mountains, and 100 voices in the hall broke out into nearly as many different songs to accompany it, for bards in all the nine... But 100 voices in the hall broke out into nearly as many different songs, for bards in all the 9 kingdoms had written different... It soon became apparent that he was. The minstrel struck up a tune as old as the mountains, to which Lauren had learned the words of a song of the moons, Enelin and Merida. But 100 voices in the hall broke out into nearly as many songs, for bards in all the 9 kingdoms had written different poetry for the same notes. That made the dancers laugh, and Jem's feet danced lightly upon the stones in time with Lauren's as they whirled around each other. Lauren was almost surprised at his practiced ease as she was at Annis's awkwardness, for the girl's feet fumbled as she did her turns with Chet. But then the middle of the song came, and Lauren and Chet gave each other a look. They took the children's hands and spun them off to each other, an effortless trade that reunited them at the same time it pitched Jem and Annis together. Lauren leaned in close. "That was well done." "You had an equal hand in it," said Chet, and kissed her cheek. They kept on with the dance, sneaking glances at the children all the while. Jem danced as easily as he had with Lauren, laughing and smiling at Annis, whose cheeks had gone dark pink? Whose cheeks had gone darker as their hands clasped. Her steps were still staggering and halting, but Jem led her easily enough, making up for her stilted movements with his own liquid grace. The song ended. Chet and Lauren bowed to each other. Jem stepped back to do the same, but Annis was slow to release his hands, and he laughed as he pried his fingers free and bowed. Then he ran over to the table where the mystic sat, extending his hand towards them. Naya waved him off, and he did not even offer his hand to Shion's steely glare. Weeth, too, shook her hand, and he went to Uzo. The dark young man gave Jem's outstretched hands a bemused look, his eyebrows rising slowly. Then he shrugged and got to his feet, following Jem away from the table as the next song began, but Annis still stood in the middle of the floor, looking after the boy. "May I?" came a voice. Lauren turned to find that it was Naya, who had risen and approached them. She held one bare, muscular arm forth, hand extended in an invitation. Lauren's cheeks burned, and she saw Chet glare. "I have tired myself out, I am afraid," said Lauren. "Mayhap Chet would accept your offer." "Mayhap I would not," said Chet, crossing his arms. "That is just as well," said Naya, shrugging. "I do not think his spindly frame could withstand me. Another time, then." Chet's scowl deepened, and he took a half-step forwards, but Naya turned and left them, striding straight past her table and out of the room. Lauren returned with Chet to her own table, for indeed she had grown weary with dancing, and drank deep of the cup of wine she had left there. When they had rested, they danced again, and then they drank again, and after they had done that a few times more, they fetched themselves more food to eat. The feasting had begun soon after midday, and would continue until everyone in the hall had gone to bed or fallen senseless beneath their tables. At some point, Lauren lost track of Annis and then of Jem, and then Annis reappeared, and then she stopped looking after either one of them at all. She had just taken it into her head that she might retire to her chamber with Chet, mayhap for the night, or mayhap just for half an hour, when a hand clutched at her sleeve. She turned to find Jem standing before her, wide-eyed and breathless. At once she sensed that something was wrong. "What is it?" "I went to relieve myself," he said. "When I was walking back through the courtyard, I saw someone standing there. At first I paid them no mind until I saw that it was Huel. He looked to be readying a horse for travel." Lauren and Chet looked to each other. Travel? On the final day of Year's End? Cal could have sent him on some errand, said Chet, but even he did not sound as if he believed the words. Any message could surely wait until tomorrow. Lauren looked to the head of the room. There sat Cal. Wine had not appeared to improve his mood, for he scowled ever more heavily at the minstrels and the dancing. She could go and ask him, but he looked to be in no mood for questions. And if something was wrong, the delay meant Huel would likely evade them before she could go after him. We must follow him. We should be quick, said Jem. He will leave at any moment. They leapt from their table and flew from the dining hall. Lauren was thankful she had worn her cloak to the feast. Alrighty. But Chet and Jem had no such protection, and they huddled into themselves against the sudden biting cold. At least there was no rain. The day had waned on, and the sun was only a finger's breadth above the horizon, but night's chill had come early. At once they saw him there in the courtyard, Huel fiddling with the straps of his saddlebags. He paid no mind to them, nor to the few others who milled about the courtyard or the walls. And why should he take notice? It was well known that he was a messenger for Cal. Anyone would assume that he was on the Grand Chancellor's business. Go and fetch cloaks for travel, said Lauren. I will ready horses for us. Chet nodded and turned to obey, but the door opened behind them and he stopped short. Framed in the light of the doorway was Naya, and beside her stood Weeth. Weeth merely looked confused, but Naya's eyes were narrowed and her brows drawn together. What is it, she said. What is wrong? Lauren hesitated only a moment before replying, It is nothing. I only wanted a moment of fresh air. That is a lie, said Naya flatly. I saw the three of you when you ran out of the dining hall. Something is the matter. Lauren looked uneasily at her friends. Chet was glowering at Naya while Jem balanced on the balls of his feet, hesitant to leave now that the mystics had arrived. But what should she say? She had known Weeth for some time and had traveled a ways with Naya, but how would they react if she told them she meant to chase down one of their own? Out with it, said Naya. I shall not leave it be, and so you'd better tell me now, lest I keep you from whatever mischief you are about to get up to. A messenger is about to leave the stronghold, Lauren began. Lauren, said Chet, a warning tone in his voice. She pressed on, ignoring him. We believe he may be up to something. I cannot explain why, and I might be wrong, but we mean to follow him and find out for certain. A long moment of silence stretched. Weeth looked to Naya, but Naya did not take her gaze from Lauren. At last she nodded. Very well. Weeth, fetch Shionne. We may need her to track him. What do you mean? Said Lauren. We're coming with you, of course, said Naya. Or have you forgotten that the Lord Prince himself assigned us to your service? Lauren had already pointed out before that the Lord Prince only bound the mystics to bring her to Ammon. Lauren had pointed out before that the Lord Prince only bound the mystics to bring her to Ammon, but she did not repeat the point now. They had wasted too much time already. Glancing over her shoulder, she saw that Hewell had already left the upper courtyard through the gate. Very well, she said. Get ready to ride as quickly as... Very well, she said. Get ready to ride as quickly as you may, and Chet, fetch those cloaks now. He frowned for a moment, looking distrustfully at Naya, but then ran to do as she said. Lauren looked at the mystics and tossed her head towards the stairs. Let us get on with it, then, and hope that we are not already too late. Chapter 15 done. Chapter 16. Lauren led Jem and Naya to the stables at a dead run, going straight to Midnight's stall. As she began to ready the blanket and saddle, the mare nickered and tossed her mane, sensing the excitement on the air. After so many days of idleness, I am relieved we have something to do at last, said Naya from across the stable. Lauren could not help smiling at her, though she quickly masked it as she noticed Jem eyeing her. I must admit I feel the same. They had almost readied the horses to ride by the time Chet returned, and with him came Weeth and Shiyun. He had already donned his own cloak, and he threw another into Jem's hands. The party brought their horses into the courtyard and mounted quickly, with Lauren dragging Jem up to sit behind her in the saddle. They rode out of the gate and through Ammon's 2 levels to the final gate that opened upon the ramp. There they stopped, and Naya hailed one of the gate guards. The messenger who just left through here, she said. Which way did he ride? The south road, said the guard. They did not pause to answer, but rode out at once. I have a gremlin knocking at my door. The messenger who just left through here, she said. Which way did he ride? South, said the guard. They did not pause to answer, but rode out at once. Lauren spurred Midnight to the head of the group, but Naya slapped the reins of her own horse until the two were neck and neck. At the crossroads, they pulled to a stop again, looking down the south road, but they saw no sign of Hewell upon it, nor of any rider. Shiyun, take the lead, said Naya. If he diverts from the road, you will see it better than any of us. Chet should ride beside her, said Lauren. He is a hunter. Naya raised her eyebrows. Of rabbits, mayhap. I doubt he has often stalked men on horseback. Lauren frowned, and Naya sighed. Very well. Shiyun and Chet ride in front. The mystic said nothing, but only nodded and nudged her horse. Now they made their way more slowly, for Shiyun could not keep a good lookout at a gallop. The reduced pace grated on Lauren's nerves, but she knew from her own little experience at hunting that they could not press on any faster, lest they lose the way. After a time, Shiyun stopped her horse and pointed off the road. There, fresh tracks leading that way. Lauren gave Chet a glance. He rolled his eyes and shrugged at her, and she smirked. Naya nudged her horse forwards beside Shiyun's. Can you follow him more quickly now? Shiyun nodded. Yes, he has cut through the land heedlessly. He does not think anyone is following him. That is his folly. Lead on. They rode on at a light canter, with Shiyun only giving her horse the slightest nudge in either direction until they reached the edge of a forest. The last sliver of sun just barely showed above the horizon, and the way ahead was dark beneath the boughs. Shiyun looked to Naya and raised her brows. We don't need to rhyme there. And the way ahead was dark beneath the trees. Shiyun looked to Naya and raised her brows. The trail will soon be hard to see, at least until the moon's rise, she said, but if he continues to ride straight, I think we might follow him easily enough. From here, though, we should go on foot, or we might alert him to our presence sooner than we would wish. Naya frowned, then she looked to Lauren. Nightblade? Should we press on? Lauren blinked. Naya had seemed forceful enough so far. Why now did she wish for Lauren to give the orders? We should. If my suspicions are correct, we cannot be too stringent in our pursuit. With a nod, Naya turned to Shiyun again. As she says. They dismounted, and Sheehan led them between the trunks. Very soon, sunlight vanished from the sky that was just visible through the branches above, and they had to make their way more slowly, with Sheehan leading them straight down the same direction they had already been traveling. Eventually, the moons appeared, and then they were able to increase their pace once again. "How does he know where he is going?" said Jem. Lauren glanced back at him. "We are following his tracks." "I did not ask how we are following him," said the boy. "I know he can see his tracks, or at least that woman can, because I feel blind as a bat in this forest. What I mean is, how does he know where he is going? There is no path here to follow. How does he pick his way so unerringly?" Chet shrugged. "Paths are not always necessary. If one comes to a place often enough, the feet begin to remember the way better than a sailor steering by the stars." Weath raised her head to look at the rest of them. Then he comes this way often. This is not his first time, nor likely his second or third, but one of many." That cast a solemn silence over them all. What purpose could a messenger for Cal have for coming so... What purpose could Cal's messenger have for coming so often to the middle of this wood? Soon Shiyun bid them all to halt with an upraised hand. Drawing Lauren and Naya to her side, she pointed ahead through the trees. "What is it?" whispered Naya. "I see nothing." "I see it," said Lauren. There, a few hundred paces ahead, was a horse tied to a tree. She could not be certain it was Huel's from such a distance, but it was black as his had been. "It seems his horse is there, but where is Huel?" "Nearby, no doubt," said Shiyun. "We should leave our own horses nearby." "Close, no doubt," said Shiyun. "We should leave our own horses nearby. Hidden. Then the three of us, or better, only two, should go on alone." "Three," said Naya. "He would not come out here to be on his own. He is meeting someone. If it comes to a fight, I would rather outnumber them." Shiyun nodded. Lauren handed Midnight's reins to Chet. But when she turned to go, he caught her hand. "Be careful," he whispered. "I shall," she told him. "And besides, Shiyun and Naya will be with me." Chet eyed Naya uncomfortably. "Forgive me if I am not greatly comforted." Lauren smiled and touched his cheek. "Take the horses and the others and get out of sight, in case Huel should circle around and return for his steed before we can come to warn you." She turned to follow Shiyun. The mystic led the way through the woods, bow out and an arrow half drawn. Naya had not had time to fetch her sword, but she had a knife in her hand. Lauren had only her hands. Naya had not had time to fetch her sword, but she had a knife. Lauren had only her hands, and the dagger hidden on the back of her belt, though she would not draw that unless it was a matter of life and death. They moved as silently as they could. Lauren knew how to muffle her steps, and Shiyun was quiet as a mouse. Naya did her best, but the woman was clearly not well practiced in woodcraft, and Lauren winced at her every footfall. A light drizzle began to come down upon them. Lauren put up the hood of her cloak and brushed the hair from her eyes. Shiyun stopped and held out a hand for them to do the same. She pointed ahead to where two figures huddled together against the rain. The one in the red cloak was clearly Huel. The other, a Feldamar woman, was unfamiliar, and Lauren was a little disappointed, though mayhap not surprised, to see that they did not wear blue and gray. "Do you recognize her?" said Lauren. "I do not," said Naya, "but that means little. This whole kingdom is strange to me." "Hist," said Shiyun, and drew them back into the shadows of the forest, for Huel had turned away from the other figure and begun to walk back towards them. After he passed them by, Lauren leaned forwards and peered towards the other figure. In her hand she held a piece of paper, a message from Huel. "There," she whispered, pointing. "I see it," murmured Naya. "Wait a moment longer for him to get out of earshot, then let us take her." "The two of you go," said Shiyun. She raised her bow. "I shall watch from here and prevent her from escape if she should slip from your grasp." Naya rolled her shoulders, casting her red cloak off her bare muscular arms. "That is unlikely." "Hey, monster." Lauren struck out to the left, circling around through the woods as she approached the figure. The woman, whoever she was, made her way through the trees in the opposite direction from where Huel had gone. She moved slowly, clearly not expecting any threat in the darkness. Lauren shattered her steps several paces to the left, while Naya drew closer and closer from the rear. When Naya was almost close enough to charge, Lauren made her move. She ran forwards a few quick paces, letting her feet fall heavy and loud, and then slapped her hand on a tree trunk for good measure. The woman came to a stop at once and froze, her eyes searching the darkness. Naya leapt and bore the woman to the ground. She fought like a wildcat, but Naya wrestled her face down into the loam, holding one arm twisted behind her back and jerking it upward until the woman grunted with pain. Oh, sorry about your space bar. Give us the message, hissed Naya through gritted teeth. I have no message, said the woman. Lauren pulled the woman's cloak aside and dug through its pockets. In a moment she heard the crinkling of parchment, and soon she had the letter. Shion appeared from the darkness nearby, her arrow trained on the woman they had captured, the bow half drawn. She pulled it out, broke the... Lauren pulled the woman's cloak aside and dug through its pockets. In a moment she heard the crinkling of parchment, and soon she had the letter. She pulled it out, broke the seal, and unfolded it, leaning far over so that her body shielded it from the drizzle. The words meant nothing to her, but she did not need to see them. There at the bottom of the page was a symbol she knew well, a twisted, spiked design, like a vine that wound in and around itself, but covered with thorns. The symbol of the shades. She sucked a sharp breath in between her teeth. Naya looked up. What does it say? Enough, said Lauren. We may return to Ammon now. Bring this one with us. But the woman on the ground gave a great heave, and Naya lost her balance for just a moment. The woman's hand darted to her belt and drew forth a dagger. Lauren cried out a warning, diving at Naya and bearing her backwards to take her out of the... dagger's reach. But the woman plunged the dagger into her own heart. She collapsed, hunching over the blade, and her lifeblood splashed upon the dark mud to turn it darker still. Chapter 16 done. 17. Darkness take her, snarled Naya. She leapt upon the woman and flipped her over, mayhap hoping to keep her alive, but it was far too late for that. Lauren seized her shoulder and drew her back. I am sure the darkness below will indeed take her, but we have more pressing business. Huel has gotten too far already. Mayhap he will return to Ammon where we can find him, but mayhap he will not. We must catch him at once. Very well, said Naya. She gave the woman's corpse one final glare before turning to go. Let us chase him down. I will take my anger out upon his hide. As quickly as they could, they ran back the way they had come. When they reached the place where Huel's horse had been, they found it already gone. Chet and the others emerged from the jungle, the horses in tow. Jem's eyes were wide, while Chet's brows had drawn together in concern. What happened? Said Chet. Huel came back this way, mounted, and rode off. We were just about to go and find you, for we feared something had... Not for us, but for someone he met with, said Lauren. We must catch him. And quickly, gain your saddles and ride. They did, spurring to a fast trot, for they could not safely go any faster between the trees. As soon as they emerged from the forest into open ground, Shion stopped them. They all scanned the horizon, but could see nothing in the moon's light. Blast it, said Naya. He could have ridden south, or he could have gone north back to Ammon. We could divide ourselves, said Weath. Let me take the boys back to Ammon while the rest of you ride south. If you find him that way, you will need more strength than we, and if we should find him, return to Ammon and in the midst of our brothers. How can he have gone so far in so short a time, said Naya, as though Weath had not spoken. We searched by moon's light, said Shion, shaking her head. No doubt I could see him if the sun were still up. Lauren thought quickly. In her cloak she had her maidstones, and upon her back she had her dagger. She jerked in her saddle, looking back towards the forest. A moment, I dropped the letter. Without waiting for an answer, she turned and galloped midnight back into the trees. Jem clung to her back at the sudden movement. Once he had righted himself, he leaned forwards to peer at her. Why did you lie to them? I can hear the crinkle of the letter in your cloak pocket. Because there is something else in my cloak pocket, and I would rather they not see it, said Lauren. Jem, you have proclaimed many times that you are my man, loyal to me. You must prove it now, for you can never tell anyone what you are about to see. Promise me, and quickly. I promise, he said, though he looked even more confused. She steeled herself and then reached into her cloak to draw forth the brown cloth packet. From it she drew a shard of maidstone, a remnant of a piece she had already broken in half, and quickly put it between her lips. It melted upon her tongue, utterly tasteless, and slid down her throat with ease. Jem's eyes shot wide. Lauren, Shush, she said. You promised. Her boots dug into Midnight's ribs, and they came riding back to the others. Naya looked at her with a scowl. That has wasted even more time, growled the mystic. I've decided that Weeth's plan is best, and that we should... Lauren let Naya's voice fade to the back of her mind. She reached within her cloak, placing a hand upon the hilt of the dagger on the back of her belt. The night grew bright as day, for in her sight the moons glowed like suns. She saw all the landscape around them in brilliant, vivid color. Even the darkness between the trees was illuminated, as though each leaf was a small lantern casting a silver glow upon the ground. She scanned the horizon in all directions, and her eyes caught upon a movement. There he was, Huel, riding upon the road, making his way south and away from Ammon. He rode at an easy pace, a light trot his horse could maintain for leagues at a time. There, she cried, shooting up straight in her saddle and pointing. I see him. Naya stopped talking abruptly and frowned. She looked in the direction of Lauren's outthrust finger. What? I see nothing. Neither did Lauren, for she had loosed her grip on her dagger, but she feigned surprise. What? He is just there, a good distance away, and small, but it is him. I am sure of it. Come. Yeah, can't do dictation myself. Tried multiple times. It's always slower for me. She set off without waiting for an answer, setting Midnight into a headlong gallop upon the road. The others had little choice but to follow her, and so they did, and soon a lot of them were riding hard. Oh, I didn't know that about Dragon. That's kind of annoying. The others had little choice but to follow her, and so they did, and soon the lot of them were riding hard. Lauren could almost sense the shock that went through the others when they too spotted Huel at last. When they had closed the distance to half a league, Huel heard them and pulled his horse to a stop. In a few moments they had reached him, and they fanned out to create a semicircle facing him. Huel did not seem particularly alarmed, but only bemused. After surveying the group, he focused upon Lauren. Nightblade, he said, inclining his head. She had not heard him speak before. His voice was smooth and bright, fresh with youth, but heavy with the weight of duty. She heard him speak in her dream, didn't she? Nightblade, he said, inclining his head. His voice sounded as it had in her dream, smooth and bright, fresh with youth, but heavy with the weight of duty. Has Cal sent you? Is there some news concerning my errand? No one sent us, said Lauren, though I wonder what masters have sent you upon your ride this night, Huel. I do not think it was Cal of the Mystics. She reached into her cloak to draw out the letter and held it up so that it fell unfolded in the moon's light. The symbol of the shades was plain to see, even from the few paces that separated them. Huel stared at it for a moment as though he did not comprehend what she had said. Then, brow furrowed, he climbed down from his horse. He took a step forwards. Stay where you are, said Naya, drawing her knife and holding it out towards him. It's very passive. Stay where you are, said Naya, drawing her knife and pointing it at him. She undrew an arrow and nocked it. Huel stopped in his tracks. You will return with us to Ammon, and if you make no trouble, you may even survive the journey. Huel raised his hands, and a small smile crossed his lips. I do not think any friendly reception awaits me at Ammon, therefore I do not think I shall come with you. An image flashed into Lauren's mind, Huel in her dream, and his eyes had glowed white, and he had transformed into a crow. Wait, she cried, he is up. She was too late. Huel's eyes filled with light, and his body erupted into a mass of flesh, muscle, and fur. In a moment, a black bear stood where he had been a moment before. A black bear stood where he had been a moment before, and around its feet pooled the shredded scraps that had been his clothing. Huel roared at them in fury and lunged. A massive claw took Weath's horse in the side, and the beast screamed as it died. Weath was flung from the saddle and rolled away from the road. Back away, cried Lauren, wheeling Midnight around and dancing a few paces off. Shun! The mystic had already sprung into action, drawing and firing an arrow. The shaft pierced Huel. The shaft pierced Huel's side, and his bestial roar took on a note of pain, but he sprang towards her, and Shun had to spur her horse... Oh, what? And Shun had to spur her horse away before she could fire another shaft. Leaping from Midnight's saddle, Lauren threw the reins into Jem's hands. He caught them on instinct and opened his mouth, but before she could speak, Lauren cried, "Get to Ammon," and slapped Midnight's flank hard. With her nostrils filled with the scent of bear, the horse brayed in fear and rode north for the fortress, with Jem desperately clinging to her back. Lauren thought of reaching for the dagger at her... Lauren thought of reaching for her dagger, but what good would it do her? Its short blade would not save her against a bear. It was proof against magic, yes, but she did not think it would help against... Its short blade would not save her against a bear. It was proof against magic, yes, but did that mean it could stop a Weremage's claws? She had never had a chance to test it. Now did not seem the best time to do so. Shun was dancing back and forth, giving Huel no clear way to charge. Naya stood a few paces off, brandishing her knife, but it seemed as impotent as the dagger. Chet had leapt from his horse and stood beside Lauren. His face was grim. Lauren took his shoulders. "It is a bear. How do you hunt a bear?" "Go into its cave with spears," said Chet. "We do not have a cave or spears," said Lauren, "and we are not dealing with a savage beast. Huel has a human's wit." Chet shrugged helplessly. "What do you wish for me to say? I have never hunted a weremage before." Lauren gave a frustrated growl, but then the ground shook beneath their feet and she heard Naya shout. She leapt to the side, seizing Chet's cloak and dragging him with her. Huel barreled past them in a flash of black fur, roaring his anger as his terrible claws passed through the air where they had just stood. Naya and Shun seized them and pulled them to their feet. Shun had another arrow knocked, but she did not draw. Weath stumbled over to them, shaking her head dizzily. "Shoot him," said Naya, looking to Shun. "I'm not a good enough shot to strike the eye, and nothing else will be a worthwhile strike," said Shun. Lauren saw that Huel had turned back towards them and was edging to the right, presenting only his front. "The skull is too thick and the shoulders are useless. Not if we can drive a knife into them," said Weath, "but that is a dangerous job, to be sure." "I will do it," said Naya, "only I will need a distraction." "If I had a spear..." Weath shook her head and then reached to her belt and drew a knife. "I will do my best." "And I," said Lauren, "but I have no blade. Does anyone have a knife to spare?" She feared to reveal her dagger with all of them so close to her. Naya knelt and took a blade from her boot. "Here." Lauren followed Weath, who approached the bear slowly at a half-crouch. Behind her, Lauren heard Chet murmur, "No one offers me..." Behind her, Lauren heard Chet mutter, "No one offers me a knife." Then there came a snikt from Shun, and soon Chet crept up beside Lauren and Weath with a blade in hand. The three of them moved low and slowly, while Shun stepped to their right to flank Huel. The three of them moved slowly forwards while Shun stepped to the right to flank Huel. Huel let out a low growl. It rumbled from his chest and thrummed in Lauren's boots. It quickened her pulse and made her breath... It rumbled from his chest and thrummed in Lauren's boots. She breathed deep to steady herself. "I doubt he will charge again," she muttered, hoping the Weremage could not hear her. "He has seen we can evade him too easily. Likely he will stand his ground and swing at us. He does not need to press forwards into our midst, for he knows he can wait for us to step within reach." "What should we do, then?" muttered Chet, speaking from the corner of his mouth. "We need to get his attention." "Faint at him," said Weath. "I will do it." "You have been hurt already," said Lauren. "Let me." She did not wait for an answer, but took 2 quick steps forward. She slashed at the empty air 3 paces from where Huel stood. He lurched backwards and swiped at her, growling, but quickly he turned his focus to Shiyun, for she had raised her bow and begun to draw. Lauren took another half step towards him, but he lunged suddenly, forcing her to dance back. Just then she saw movement over his shoulder. There was Naya creeping forwards through the grass, little more than a shadow in a red cloak. She lifted one hand, her dagger held reversed within it, ready to bring down in a stab. Huel paused. He raised his muzzle into the air, sniffing. With a wordless cry, Lauren leapt forwards and slashed at him. He jerked away just as an arrow from Shiyun flew forth and lodged in his foreleg. Chet, Lauren, and Weath pressed forwards, brandishing their knives. Huel bellowed and reared up on his hind legs, and then Naya struck. Leaping forward, she wrapped one thick arm around Huel's neck and plunged the knife into his shoulder. He cried out anew, but this time the sound was pure fear. Lauren's elation lasted only a moment, for whether by accident or intent the Weremage toppled backwards. Naya had to throw herself clear and roll away, taking the knife with her. Huel rounded on her, swiping at the air, but Naya rolled again, distancing herself. No sooner had she risen to her knees than she flipped the knife into her fingertips and threw it. Huel only just raised a paw in time, and instead of driving into his throat, the dagger buried itself up to the hilt in his leg. A low whine issued from the bear's throat, and white light came from its eyes once again. Slowly, Huel shrank, his thick coat of fur sinking back into his body. In the shrinking of his frame, Naya's knife slid free. It fell to land in the dirt, coated in thick blood. At last, Huel stood before them, naked and panting in the moonlight, blood pouring from his wounds. For a moment, all was still. Then, though nothing had been said, Huel began to laugh. "Oh, you're a clever one indeed, Nightblade," he said. "I do not know how you learned the truth about me, but once again you have shown me your worth as a foe." His familiar tone made her pause. "What do you mean? I've never seen you before, and you know nothing of me." "You are the Nightblade. Everyone knows of you," said Huel, and now his smile turned cruel. "Rogan and his undying brutes, my brothers, and sweet Damaris of the family Yaren. She in particular sends her regards, and she looks forward to her reunion with you, which, now that I am exposed, will certainly be soon in coming." "What reunion?" said Lauren. "Tell us what the family Yaren is planning, and you may yet escape with your life." "Do you think I believe that?" he snarled. "I have played at being a mystic for years. I've seen how they treat those who they put to the question. No, such a fate is not for me." His eyes began to glow. Beside Lauren, Naya straightened with a start and then lunged. "He is healing himself." Huel leapt up from the ground, and in the air he grew a beak, and black feathers sprouted from his skin. The crow's wings flapped desperately as Shiyun's hastily loosed arrow pierced the air below him. He flew off through the sky, giving a raucous, braying caw. The sight of the beak erupting from his face, indeed his whole transformation, made Lauren weak. It threw her mind back to her dream, and she saw Chet's open throat, but then she turned to see him standing beside her, alive and whole. Her mind could not reconcile the images from her dream and the sight before her eyes. Her knees gave out, and she sank to the ground. "Lauren," cried Chet. He knelt beside her. "Are you all right?" It is nothing," she said, shaking off the vision. "A moment's dizziness, that is all." He frowned at her. "Did he hurt you? I did not see him land a blow." She shook her head quickly. "He did not touch me. I am all right." With his help, she fought her way back to her feet. Naya, Weath, and Shiyun all stood there looking at her. "I am fine, except that he has escaped, and we have nothing." "We have enough," said Chet. "You have the letter. That is proof enough of his guilt." "And what use is guilt?" snapped Naya. "He could lead us to those who commanded him, and now we have not the faintest clue where to find them. Who cares if we know the dog misbehaved? I wish to find the masters who told him to bark." "Well, we have not done that," said Chet. "Scowl about it if you wish." Naya opened her mouth to reply, but Lauren cut her off. You said he healed himself. What did you mean?" The mystic glared. "Weremages. They transform their own bodies, and therefore many are able to close their own wounds and stop themselves from bleeding to death." "That is a useful talent," said Lauren. She had not meant it as a joke, but Naya gave a grim smile anyway. "Mayhap, but it is almost as painful as suffering the wound again. I take some small comfort that I caused him that much pain, at least." Lauren sighed. "I find little to give me comfort just now. Come, let us mount our horses. We have a long ride back to Ammon, and we do not bear good news." 18. Okay, I was going to go for an hour and a half, but I actually am going to end here. Because the kids don't seem to be wanting to go to bed, and my wife could probably use my help. Oh, crap, Kristen. You came just as I'm ending off. Wah, wah. Sorry. Gotta go help Meg finish putting the kids to bed. I might stream again later tonight, but probably not. don't worry. You're gonna get more of me than you bargained for pretty soon. Oh God, losing internet. That's like. Ugh. All right, I'll catch you another time. Oh, hey, before I go though, just a reminder. Just saying. Just saying. All right. Taking off. I'll catch you another time. Bye.